Vaughn Hugo, and I'm a longtime resident of Santa Clarita, California, which actually incorporates the towns of Saugus, Valencia, Canyon Country, Newhall. It's north of Los Angeles. We're more commonly known as Six Flags Magic Mountain off the 5 freeway.
Yes. And so I guess for the purpose of this interview, we can also specify it down. We could talk about Santa Clarita as a whole, or if there's a specific, we just want to talk about Saugus or just one specific location, whatever you think would be best.
Well, it's all one valley. It was the Santa Clarita Valley, and it had smaller little subsections. And I moved out here in 1973, and then it incorporated in 1988 as a city, and it brought in most of those side things. So it started when I moved out here was a population of about 15,000, and we're now north of 750,000.
Okay, wow. So how fast would you say that grew like that? Has it been steady, or?
It actually, I would say it's been kind of exponential.
That makes sense.
With the caveat that as the economy has gone up and down, they'll have a lot of growth, and then the housing market popped out here, and then we had about 10 years of stagnation and not a lot of building. And then when the market started cooking, the best way I can describe it is we're at the north end of Los Angeles County.
Right.
We're actually the last outpost in. Because of that, we're kind of like a tube of toothpaste. As the squeeze in Los Angeles has come, the toothpaste just keeps coming out. The building out here keeps growing. We're the outlet for Los Angeles.
Okay, and yeah, that totally makes sense. So then thinking about, we can throw in things other than the landscape, those other things that you mentioned, but at least with some sort of landscape lens. How would you say when you first moved there before this population boom, and I'm sure that also spurred a lot of development, which would definitely affect the landscape. So how would you say it used to be before that?
Well, so through the middle of our city, because we are a valley, and through the middle of our city runs a dry riverbed. Now, the dry riverbed during the winter becomes like a raging river, and then it completely dries up. But when I moved out here, there was tons of agriculture. If you go further towards the ocean, it's all an agricultural valley going all the way out 126 till you get to the ocean. And we were part of that. Onion fields and lettuce fields and crops everywhere. And then those crops have now they're completely non-existent. There's, a couple small, tiny little farms. But yeah, it definitely was agriculture originally, and it's disappeared completely and been replaced with houses. Okay,
so now it's very much just a residential suburb of Los Angeles, not so much run by the agricultural.
100%. In fact, when we moved out here, it was kind of interesting. The two major industries out here, and nobody really Magic Mountain was out here, and Valencia was a planned community around Magic Mountain. They had pretty much every development planned and paseos, and it was really elegant the way they had it planned. But the two main things were, there was a area in the middle of the city that hasn't been developed, but the only part that hasn't, and that was it was a munitions factory. They made bombs for World War II. And then it was so obscure and remote out here that during the Cold War, Lockheed had built their wind tunnels and their secret test facilities because the Russians would never attack out here because it's nothing but
That's actually really interesting. I didn't know that. That's very different.
It was out in the middle of nowhere, but it was really important, and it was top secret and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I didn't even know about it until 10 years ago.
Oh, whoa. After the fact?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That's really interesting. Yep. So then I guess just thinking about your experience with the change of the landscape, the change of the city, I know just as a resident, this might not be as much has changed, but are there some things that you feel like you used to do in Santa Clarita that now has really changed with the development, or even just other people? I'm sure since it was more agricultural, there were a lot more people working with those types of industries, whereas now it's probably moved more towards, factories, businesses, services, right, more indoors things, but just like, how do you think some of the activities that you've done or you've seen people do have changed?
Well, I mean, just from a personal level, every single place we used to go, we used to have, forts, and we used to have bike trails, and we used to go motorcycle riding, and out here it was empty space, so it was very outdoor like life. It was a very rural feeling, and all of that is paved over. It's hard to find those areas anymore. Now you have to drive to actually get to some place nature.
Yeah, that's definitely a change. And just out of curiosity, do you feel like just the people in the city sort of, like, obviously the development, but then, like, do you think people lost interest in those activities, or it was just sort of the way it went?
No, it was because of the fact we were kind of a sleepy suburban town. We and Valencia. Okay, so doubling back around, about 5 minutes from where we live, there used to be a huge dam. So if you watch like Chinatown or any of the movies about Los Angeles getting their water, there was a dam that they built up one of the canyons by us, called the San Francisco Dam, and it collapsed in like 1932 or something.
Okay.
And it wiped out pretty much the entire population of Valencia, Santa Clarita, all the way down 126. And there was a company out here called Newhall Land Company, and they came in and bought up everything, like for pennies on the dollar, from all the survivors. And therefore, they owned all of this land, and they started farming. That was their original thing. And then they moved to developing housing.
Okay, so that was the same corporation that did that.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so they're just trying to do, money moves more so than...
Correct, and their anchor, they were pretty smart, because what they did is they came in and they built Magic Mountain. I mean, there was like nothing out here when they built Magic Mountain, and sort of the city grew up around that. So like that was, I want to say it's still one of our biggest employers, but it's probably been the biggest employer for the last 30 years.
Wow. Interesting.
Yes.
Well, unless there are some other points or activities that you want to highlight, I think that's really the gist of the interview.
I'll give you one last thing.
Sure, yeah.
You do with it what you want to. It's really interesting because the water, we have limited water out here because,
right.
We're kind of on the edge of the desert. But what's really interesting is all the developments out here are fueled by, when they go to court because they're challenged because there's no water, what happens is they say, oh, we have water. We've bought it from the west side of the San Joaquin Valley, which is just on the other side of the Grapevine, just on the other side of the hill. The San Joaquin Valley goes all the way up to Sacramento. And it's kind of the breadbasket of the U.S. I want to say like 2/3 of the vegetables in the United States come from this area. But on the west side, it's much drier, and they get paid by the federal government to not plant crops, and they're, so because they have limited water, and then they turn around and sell the water to Santa Clarita, at least on paper, saying, here, you have this water if you ever need it. So all of these farmers are getting double paid by the government and by Newhall Land and Farm and the developments out here for water that doesn't even exist. So we're kind of on this razor's edge where if we ever go into a deep drought, you can watch kind of the grapes wither on the vine, and we would be those grapes.
Yeah, just relying on water that really isn't there.
Right. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm sure we'll probably see that problem, like, in our lifetimes, but hopefully not. Hopefully they can figure out a solution first.
Hopefully not, but you can't create more water. That's
right, exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate getting to hear about your experience in Santa Clarita. Sounds like it's been very interesting and very changing over the years. Should be interesting to see how it keeps going. That, because we foresee these problems, have to sort of do this back to nature type thing, or just continue with the development, but it should be interesting.
Yeah, 100%.